from our team in Amsterdam and Dubai to join us today. They're all working on 3 hours of sleep, so a round of applause, please.
They're with us.
I'd start with Mipe to quickly introduce yourself so that you guys could quickly introduce your roles and what you do at Uber, how long you've been here, so everyone's familiarized, and then we'll start with the conversation.
Sure. So my name is Mipe and I've been with Uber for 2.5 years. I initially joined Uber in the legal team where I was senior counsel for Sub-Saharan Africa. I did that for about 1.5 years and then I made a pitch to the GM for Sub-Saharan Africa to create a completely new role called Partner Engagement Lead. The purpose of that role is to understand and then represent the interests of driver partners in our day-to-day decision making and throughout the business. Did that for a little over 1 year, and then I recently just joined our central team, so I'm now going to be doing driver engagement, but across the EMEA region.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Anouk. I'm HR Director for our EMEA region, based out of Amsterdam. I'm French from a background perspective. I've been at Uber for 18 months now. I was in a similar capacity at Booking.com for about 3 years prior to joining Uber, and I'm enjoying the ride very much.
Thank you. Nada.
Hi guys, I'm Nada. I'm the head of marketing for Middle East and Africa, which is also a bit of a new role for me. I was primarily focused on the Middle East until about 2 months ago. So this is my first time in Pakistan and I'm extremely excited to be here and understand your market and be on the ground. Before Uber, I was actually an entrepreneur, like a bunch of people in this space. So this is like familiar territory. I used to be really active in the startup scene in Dubai and you know, all of these tech talks and these meetups. So I feel like I'm in my element today. Thanks for having us.
Super. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. So a lot of the people, and I worked in the startup industry as well, a lot of the founders that I sit down and talk to are concerned about the culture that they're starting to set in their companies. So I just want to hear from you guys your perspective on culture and what it really means for a startup, or maybe even a company like Uber.
We didn't always do things right at Uber, and I think a lot of companies that start, that need to go and get into certain markets and etc., it's sometimes hard, and we didn't always do things right. We sometimes went into countries where it wasn't necessarily legal to operate, and we thought it was the right thing to do, and we were, I think, very genuinely convinced that that was the only way that we would actually change behaviors around or mentalities around, etc., and convinced that this was the right thing to do, but it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. And so that's more from a business perspective, and what that triggered was behaviors within the organization as well on what is good or not good to do. And sort of business at all costs literally was our motto for probably a little too long, which I would say, and you can speak probably for some of this as well, but a lot of startups typically have growth. Let's just get going. Let's continue to grow. Let's foster business everywhere we can. And there's this point in time where you have to just pause a minute and really start thinking about what's the trade-off. And if you really think about future growth and sustainable growth, well, sometimes you actually have to pause, to take things slower, to do things in a different way, to do things right, and that might slow down your business, maybe, possibly, but ultimately that's the only way that you can continue to grow and be sustainable in that growth. So this is kind of the transition that I think Uber has operated in the last 18 to 24 months, and this is where we are. And now if you look at our, what we call our cultural norms today, we have one that is very, very strongly embedded in every people's mind, I think, in the organization today, which is we do the right thing, period. And this is very true for the way we operate business, but also the way, as HR I'll talk about this, but also how we are dealing with people in general, and how we want people to feel inside our organization.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll add on that a bit in terms of maybe even before Uber and the way culture manifests when you're building something small, right? Because what Uber represents is how quickly culture grows with the growth of the company, right? So these are the culture for me is kind of the manifestation of the values that the team and the leadership determine they want to drive the business by, right? And so that's brought to life through actions, and through actions that are discouraged or encouraged, and behaviors that are encouraged and discouraged. And I think, when I think back to the last startup I was in, culture varied from this kind of interpersonal interaction that we wanted to create and have personal relationships with people, but also to all be doers, right? And so there was no one person in the company that was tasked with moving the boxes on moving day. Everybody came in jeans, we all moved the boxes on moving day, right? So there are certain behaviors that you really kind of build in your team, and then you see them in others as well, and start replicating them and encouraging them. And I think that's what builds a culture. Sometimes it goes really right, and sometimes it goes really wrong. And I think the other thing is that some values are right at a certain point in time. 5-6 years down, 10x growth later, they're no longer in line with what the business needs to continue to drive growth. So I think it's just this awareness and consciousness as well of what the culture is delivering at a given certain time, but how lasting the impact of it can be.
There's also, we have this tendency to think of the company as an other, as an institution. The company is like this, right? The company behaves this way. There's a certain amount of individual responsibility that needs to be taken to build the culture in a company. And that's sort of the bottoms-up way that you can change the culture. There is the top-down way that you can introduce certain policies and processes, put in an HR infrastructure, etc. But if you are a jerk to your colleague, or you're a fantastic person to your colleague, you are informing the culture, and all of those different interpersonal interactions actually build up the culture of the company.
There's another buzzword that goes around a lot is diversity and inclusion. And I know that it's very core to what we're doing as well. So I want to hear what you guys think about diversity and inclusion. Is it something that helps build culture, or is it something that's driven by an existing culture? And how important do you guys think diversity and inclusion really is for a growing startup, or a startup that's just picking up business?
Diversity and inclusion is one piece of the culture. So we're now mostly focused on culture overall, of which diversity and inclusion is a big part of. That answers your question.
Yes, thank you. You guys want to add something?
I'd say out of respect for people's identities, it's really critical that we don't think of diversity in a superficial way. Do not presume that because I'm a woman, I'm going to think a certain way, or I'm a good fit for a particular kind of role. Do not think because I'm black, I'm going to think a certain kind of way, or I'm going to represent a certain kind of interest. So there's this need, and one of the issues that you see a lot with universities in America when they're looking at diversity in their admissions is that there are some who are just taking a point-based system that's like, all right, cool, we have 10 women, we have 5 men, etc. Whereas there are others who are really digging deep into understanding the individual, understanding where they're coming from, and ensuring that they're actually going to bring a diverse viewpoint or a diverse background to the thinking in the room. And it also goes to, and I say this as someone who's like, parents are not from the US, but I grew up in the US, and what do I actually represent when I get to a room? And are you presuming that I'm going to come to the table with a particular viewpoint that's different just because I look a certain way on paper? Mm-hmm. Or are you actually getting to understand what is it that I'm going to bring to the table because you've gotten to know me and you've gotten to know where I'm coming from? It's a lot more resource intensive to do that, but it's really critical to ensuring that you're bringing diversity and authentic diversity, and not just we're able to kind of like satisfy some stats for a report somewhere.
So I think a question to you, Anouk, as a follow-up would also be, we run the survey, the culture survey, and I'm sure there's other versions of it that global startups are also running. But is there a study that we've run internally that shows the impact of diversity or sense of belonging on business growth? Have we run something like that, or do we plan to?
We don't have internally something like that today, but there's been like lots of different studies on the topic, and there's a very clear correlation between the most diverse organizations and the actual business outcomes. So that's not something we are running per se at Uber today. And again, what is diversity and how do you measure that is very, very difficult. But there are lots of studies out there that actually prove the very direct correlation between business performance and diversity. And again, to the earlier point that we made, if there are people around the table thinking about a problem in the exact same way, there's very little chance that you can actually anticipate what your customer outside of the room actually thinks, or how to tackle a problem in a different way, or have you asked yourself the right questions around the problem. It's not just finding different solutions, it's actually thinking about the problem in a different way.
Yeah. So I think something else that I wanted to discuss here on this platform was, there's always preconceived notions of specific roles and specific jobs in organizations, that some roles are made for women and some roles men can do better. Have you guys dealt with situations like those as managers, as directors, and have you been able to counter it in a way where you were able to show that a girl can do a man's job or a man can do a girl's job?
Thankfully, I don't feel that I operate in a world where that is a case for me anymore. It definitely was my experience in my career, I would say, in the last 10, 15 years, particularly because I worked in Saudi Arabia, which is generally a male-dominated professional sphere, right? So I don't think it was ever about a job profile that a girl can do this versus a man doing that. A lot of my experience has taught me to sometimes work with the culture and flow with the river rather than swim upstream, and there are many other ways to get things done. It just challenges you to be very creative. Some people struggle with that because you feel that you're compromising as a result of your gender, but I think that's been the practice I've had in some of that more male-dominated context.
Cool. So I think we've got 10 minutes left, so I'll ask one more question and then open the floor for questions. I think in terms of negotiation and kind of navigating your way up through org structures and power structures, you guys are all in leadership roles. I'd like to hear how you guys navigated your way up. Was it a strategy you guys used, or have you noticed people using strategies around you? Is there tips you want to give the girls in the audience around this?
That's a good question. Buying myself time. I wouldn't say there's strategies. I will say there are a few things that I've reflected on throughout my development in my career. I think it is common to say, although I won't generalize, but women, and I say this because of all the interactions with all my female friends who are professionals, we tend to negotiate less, right? We're kind of grateful for what we got, and sometimes a little questioning whether we deserve more or not, and that's something that I've tried to challenge myself on, I think, in the last few years of my career. Is there a strategy? I think I've watched other women implement some strategies, and I'm learning from them. I think one of the things I learned is don't wait until it's the time for the discussion. Establish your value at every point that you can, because when the discussion comes, it's like you're starting from scratch. So there's something about speaking up for the value that you're bringing to the table. I think the other thing is sometimes is just finding the courage when you think you deserve more, and sometimes it's just taking the risk because there's nothing to lose. I think there's also that fear of, if I challenge what I'm being asked for, they'll take it away from me. Probably not. I don't say that I've done this successfully all the time. I'll be really honest. It's something that I keep reflecting on and challenging myself on. But yeah, a lot of consciousness and talking to other people about how they do this, and talking to people, and I would say not just women, because I find men who are my friends and have succeeded in their careers, and I want to learn from them just as much as I want to learn from the women. It's the principles that drive them to act a certain way that has progressed their career that is what I really want to learn from.
Yeah, I'd also say that my gender neutral advice when it comes to professional development is to know who you are. So don't define yourself by the roles and titles and positions that exist in your company or exist in society. Really understand who you are and construct something around that. So don't look at things from jobs, I want to have this job, I want to have this career. Really have a clear sense of what is it that you're good at, what is it that you enjoy, what are and it could be like specific competencies or it could be more values, but once you're able to do that, you have so much more freedom to craft something around you. And I've just seen consistently through my career, and thankfully I've also been in organizations that are receptive to the level of flexibility that I like to pursue in my career, is that it's been more about me saying, what is it that I can do? What are the values that I bring to the table? What are the skills that I bring to the table? And then making a pitch for why that now needs to exist, rather than me kind of like looking through the org structure and saying, I want to go for that position, that particular role or that particular position.
And for me, maybe to actually complement a bit on both sides, I think one thing that's helped me always is to have not necessarily a super precise idea of where it is that I want to go, but have enough direction to make sure that I manage my opportunities or whatever came my way in a way that actually made sense and helped me at the end of the day reach where eventually I want to get to. And I don't know what it is that I want to do when I grow up, I always say, but at least I know that where I am and what it is that I do will eventually help me get to that direction. That's one. And then the second piece is to what Mipe said, I've never pretended to be somebody different. I'm the same person in the office as I am at home. I've got 2 young children, so often I get to the office, I'm dead tired, they haven't slept, they're sick, they're whatever, I need to take them to school. Whatever it is, that's me being a mother, and I'm sure that everyone in the room has their own personal struggles and circumstances. So it's not about being a mom, it's about having personal circumstances and a life outside of the office. But the more you're actually natural about this and also open up within the organization, and the more it helps also, because there is a whole context around who you are, and I think just being open about this will eventually help you also. And not just trying to contain everything for yourself and struggling, and you will struggle if you do that. So